All right, wonderful. Hello, everyone, and good evening. Thank you for joining us for tonight's Equity Board meeting. It is now 6:02, and we're going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. We do have quorum. So, Monica, if you would please go ahead and provide us with the attendance.
Thank you very much, Shay. Good evening, board members. This is Monica Negrilla, Human Services Manager and Staff Liaison. And I'm gonna call all of you, I'm gonna call your name, and when you hear your name, please let us know that you're here. I'm gonna start with Elisa Stewart.
Present.
Hi, Elisa, good evening, welcome. Helen, I don't see Helen here. I believe she's absent, so I haven't heard from her. Helen Kivench. Lorna Gilmore. Here. Welcome, Lorna. Good evening. Lucrecia Choto.
Here.
Good evening. Ray Manahan has an excused absence. He's traveling for work tonight. Shay Fleming. Good evening, Shay.
Good evening, everyone.
Tony Curry. I know he was planning on joining. Perhaps he's running a little bit late. We'll hear hopefully from here a little bit later. Cristina Abonce, good evening, buenas noches. Thanks. Hi. Kelly Mann.
Here.
And Pretty Malvika. Here. Good evening, board members. That concludes the attendance, Shay. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, and we appreciate everyone's attendance tonight. It looks like we're ready to move forward in the agenda, but first we want to set some housekeeping rules. We just want to remind everyone that you're currently allowed to join the meeting either virtually or in person. And I'm sorry, Monica, I forgot to ask, do we have any community members tonight?
We do have a few community members here in the room ready to make public comments whenever we are ready to take public comments.
Thank you for that. All right, so while we're in this meeting, we ask that everyone be respectful. Remember to use your loud and clear voices so that the interpreters can understand what you're saying. We also want you all to be sure to say your questions or comments. And if you're online, please just put in the chat that you have a question or a comment, just for those that are on the phone and can't see your responses. Other than that, we are ready to move into our next agenda item. So has everyone had a chance to review the previous agenda? Oh, I'm sorry, Monica, go ahead. Did I miss something?
Would you like to do public comments first?
Yes, let's go ahead and get those public comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And good evening, Tony. I see you're able to join us. Welcome. Board members, in the public comment section, we have the Baha'is of Issaquah with us tonight. They signed up and they sent us a notification. They would like to talk with you for a few moments, and they have an announcement. So please feel free to come to the table. Ted Lucas from the Baha'is.
Good evening. Hi, Monica and board members. My name is Ted Lucas from Issaquah, and a member of the Baha'i community. We so admire your work, and we don't want to take any of your time, but simply here to help and support. What we're doing is simply save the date. We're going to have another community building social. Some of you are able to attend, and hopefully everybody heard about it. I know Tracy, Christina, and Ray. And we're going to kind of do the same thing again. We're going to come up with a slightly different topic, but it'll be an informal, open to the whole community about how we raise awareness and commitment, and how do we, build community, kind of by actually working at building community and consulting and talking about sharing ideas how to do that, which went really well the first time, and we expect even more people to attend the next one. And it's a great moment for dialogue. It's simply exposure with one another and for yourselves to hear the community. And we are not only the Baha'is, but we're inviting people from every background and neighborhood and ages, particularly young people. And it was really fun to have young people, family members, friends, neighbors, and that kind of thing. So save the date for Saturday, March 25th. So we do have some time, March 25 at 5 p.m., just like before, including dinner, which is really nice, and so on. And we'll come forward within the next few weeks with the actual hard copy of the invitation for you to be able to share with others. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ted.
So since this is being said in public, anyone from the public can RSVP, is that correct?
RSVP, yeah, we'd like to
Okay.
know, of course.
Okay.
And by way of, nobody has my phone number or anything, but if anyone in the public were interested, we'd love to have you join us. Maybe it's contact with Monica and the city staff, and we can, be informed in that way.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ted. Board members, we also have a second guest making public comments tonight. Connie Marsh sent an email. You may have seen the email that was sent out last night. Connie's also here with us tonight to share some feedback and thoughts with the board. Welcome, Connie. Good evening.
Okay, hi, I'm Connie Marsh, and I've been an activist in Issaquah for, I think 28 years now. So I wanted to speak to you again on the public engagement toolkit and how it currently functions. We've actually had it for quite some time. And so as a beginning, it's like, what should the process be of assessing if your toolkit is working, right? It does seem like it should have said, go out to the broader public and ask them how it's working, if they're satisfied and if it needs to be changed. So when I look at the function of the toolkit in this situation, I wonder if it worked. Most of the people who I copied in my emails came back to me with, what toolkit? We have a toolkit? Never knew. And so I think that we could have some progress there. So it's coming to you as far as I can understand. That's it. I guess it may go back to council, but not out to the regular public. So I sent you more detail, but off the top, the current toolkit, in my experience, does not provide enough structure for things we do all the time. Large capital projects, neighborhood capital projects should actually flow through about the same way. So people know what's happening, they know what to expect. It goes sort of here, then it goes here, here, and you don't have to reimagine what it might be. There's no surprises there. And so I can imagine large capital projects, which would be like big roads, and then small things would be like neighborhood improvements. You have a small road improvement or you have a park improvement in a neighborhood, and those could have structures. There may be many other things that need to be more fluid in order to understand what would work. And I think it needs to be flexible to some extent. Now, of course, what I said is it has to be true. If you don't really want the public comment, then engaging the public is not going to get anybody anywhere except for frustration, right? And so that has been one of the downfalls with our public participation, is the people speak and then it sort of goes into a void and it disappears over time. And then in the case of like Sunset Way, we had this big, huge public process, 3 meetings. It was like 5 years ago. And then somebody says, oh, well, we need to look at Sunset Way. And they go back and they start it 10 years ago, like we never had any of the public process at all. And so the public put hours and hours into this. They came to 3 night meetings. It was a big deal and it's gone. So we need to figure out how to keep these public things in the history of the projects so that they just don't disappear. And then when you start the public engagement again, you can see the progress that was made over time. Now, opinions will change, so you still need to have the public process, but you can't just lose it. And the public should be able to reach in and see the past, and right now they cannot. So this toolkit does not establish that need to preserve these things in history and make them accessible by the public. So if I was to ask for a thing, I would ask that this toolkit actually be put out into the public, and you should say to the public, well, what do you think? How are we doing so far? What could we do better and what is missing? And I don't know that you all can know and edit this document in order to provide that. If I had 3 hours, I could make some progress, but it's not my job either, right? So that would be my single recommendation. If you want to go through with it on your own, just think, if I was a public member and something was happening, what would I want to expect, and what would make it easy for me to comment? And then in the end, how would I feel satisfied that my comments were heard? And so I'm going to do one more example because I think my time is running low. But we had a park thing going on up the hill, and we all got together. We had several meetings, and then every time the Parks Department took it to Park Board, they didn't tell anybody who was in all those meetings that it was going to Park Board, even for decision making. And so everybody just got dropped off the cliff. So there was no continuation of the engagement. And the park people say, well, we don't have staff. Well, if you don't have staff and you don't have time, then that's a whole different situation. It doesn't mean that you should drop off public engagement, right? Because we're doing all of this for the community. Okay, there you go. You have my other letters, and Mary Lynch sent you an email just a few minutes ago if you wanted to look at that. Thanks for listening, you guys. I have to run to a different meeting, sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Connie. And so board members, as Connie mentioned, we received right before the board meeting also another similar email from another resident, Mary Lynch, expressing similar feedback and concern as Connie did. And so with that concludes public comment, board members. And Shay, it's back to you. I know that you are going to continue conversation on the public engagement toolkit a little bit later tonight.
Yes, and thank you, Monica, and thank you to the public members that decided to speak tonight. We appreciate you. Next, we'll move on to the approval of the January 4th minutes. I will give everyone just a minute or two to review if you haven't already. And I just get a thumbs up or a quick wave from the board members that are in person when you're ready to move forward.
Thank you. It looks like everyone here in the room is ready to move forward, Shay.
Wonderful. Are there any changes or adjustments that we need to make to the previous minutes? No, and it looks like that minutes is unanimously approved. Wonderful. So then we'll move forward into our agenda items. So first on our agenda is the revised virtual attendance policy, and Tisha will join us to talk a little bit more about that.
Thank you. Welcome, Tisha.
Hi, I'm Tisha Kieser, City Clerk. I've now been in a few of your meetings. It's nice to see you again. So last time we met, you had a great discussion about this policy and provided a lot of feedback. So as a reminder, the city was proposing that you provide for virtual attendance in your rules and regulations, and we're recommending certain things like 5-day notice, a request for permission to attend virtually, and that a quorum of your boards, 5 members, would be needed in person for a meeting to proceed. And during the discussion at the board meeting, it was clear that majority of the board members really felt that ability to attend virtually removed a potential barrier from participation in the board. And there were varying perspectives shared about, I think to some extent, whether we like to interact in person or virtually, to some extent, there's a personal preference there, I feel. But so we heard from people board members who preferred one of the options over the other, but a majority of the group really encouraged flexibility. I'm looking at my notes here that I included in the memo that was in your agenda. So based on the input that I heard from the group, which included a statement about, next time we're bringing around a policy for boards and commissions, why don't we start with the equity board to get the equity lens, which I noted, and I have been sharing the feedback you provided on this policy with the boards I'm presenting to subsequently. So based on your input, the revised policy that was in your packet tonight really backs off requirements. So it says, it encourages you to notify your staff liaison if you're planning to attend virtually, so that we have some sense of how you're participating, but you don't need permission. It doesn't require any particular reason be stated, and it removes that minimum number in the room. I also removed the preference for an alternate being in person, being given preference over a virtual alternate, just removed that altogether. So I think this is a much more open-ended policy that allows for that flexibility the board was looking for. The one thing that I didn't change, and maybe we should talk about for just a minute tonight, was the chair. Tonight we have a chair who's doing a wonderful job virtually, but I did leave in the policy the requirement that the chair be in the room. This was for two reasons, because there was some discussion about this at the meeting. One, I do think that it can be hard to gauge people interested in speaking in the room when you're attending virtually. The way our camera is set up right now, you can see there's just this little band at the top of the room. So if someone's seeking attention, it's a little difficult to tell for someone who's attending virtually. I also do think that it's beneficial to have at least one other person in the room with the staff. If we have members of the public or others attending, I think having at least one board or commission member is a nice thing. And I think that, for those reasons, my suggestion as the clerk is to keep that provision in, but that would mean your next meeting, if your chair was going to be virtually, that someone in the room would need to pick up that responsibility. So if you as a group would like to remove that provision and allow the chair to chair virtually, then that would need to be an amendment to the proposed language, and I can help you with any wording for that. But at tonight's meeting, I'm hoping that you will approve this proposed policy or a version of it. If you have any changes, you can certainly propose those. And there was a motion provided in the memo, and this policy change requires a vote of 5 members in support to amend your rules and regulations. With that, that's all I have.
Board members, questions, comments?
Question: if the chair cannot be here in person, can another member be an assistant, but still the chair be running? Right now, I know Monica has been doing a lot of the support, so I think I'm trying to find out, is that not something you'd recommend, or would you recommend, are you saying that just besides Monica, you want another board member present so that they can assist the chair if the chair is unable to attend in person?
I think it's, and again, I'm open here. I mean, I will tell you, I have participated in a lot of hybrid meetings, and I do think it's hard. It's easier to gauge a hand raised virtually. It's harder to gauge that desire in the room. It's also hard to ascertain certain elements of what's happening in the room when you're virtual. And the chair's role is to really facilitate and lead the meeting. I do think that's made harder. I think that, though, to your point, someone else in the room could assist with that. I mean, Monica's doing that tonight, right? She highlighted there was public comment. She's going to bring anything up that Shay needs to know. And certainly you can partner to help the chair do so virtually. So I don't think this is, if the board would just prefer to not put a parameter around that and you want to keep it open, that's absolutely fine. I've included it again because I think it's slightly easier for the chair. I also think it's helpful to have other board members get an opportunity to chair. I think we have this tendency of having, one person take on that role. And then sometimes it's hard after that year is up to get someone else who's willing. And so, if the chair needs to be virtual, it kind of would encourage someone else to step in and practice. So those are some of my thoughts, but certainly it's something you could remove.
would say that I had a quick question, and I know Tony has a comment. I would just want to know if that provision were to stay, could we possibly put some exceptions into the verbiage? For example, natural disaster or, personal issue that's been reported prior to, in order to kind of help everyone not feel so obligated, I guess you would say, or consider some instances where myself may not be able to come in.
Yeah, so in the case of a, like an emergency situation, we would move to a totally virtual meeting, and we now have the authority to do that under state law, which is great. But sure, certainly. So there are a couple options. I mean, one option would be to just remove that statement that's in the proposed rules and just keep it open-ended. So really the chair would have the ability to do the same thing any board member would, attend virtually or in person, and retain their chairing role. The other thing we could say is encouraged to attend in person. So it kind of implies it's a preference, but it might not always be possible. So those are two options.
Yeah, I really like changing the verbiage, just because I know that I have an extenuating circumstance that may affect my ability to be in person. However, I'll leave it up to the board to help us decide. Tony, and I know you have a comment, so if you're ready.
Sorry, I was on double mute. I do have a comment. So what I would personally prefer in that is that maybe the language be changed to not, let's say, the chair, maybe a chair. For example, let's say for let's say me, as a vice chair, I think maybe all the onus shouldn't be on Shay to show up. That it should be a chair needs to be like if we want to keep the language in there that a chair needs to be there in person, not necessarily the chair, but maybe a chairperson. But then I also look at it from an equity lens as well, because one day Shay and or I will not be chairs. So would that bar someone who really wants to be on the equity board, who has a passion for leadership and wanting to do it? It could possibly bar them from that role, and they may be well suited for it. So I'm kind of on the fence on me personally, where I would vote in that regard. But I think from the least, it should be, all the onus shouldn't be on Shay to show up. It should be on both of us. Meaning that a chair, but not the chair, has to be there in person.
Thank you, Tony. And Shay, in case you don't see, Pretty has a comment.
Yeah, so I would vote to leave the language out around a chair being obligated to be in person or anything. I would just leave it open. I think today's a perfect example, and I think it works fine. I do recognize Monica is kind of narrating what happens in the room, but I think any of us could fulfill that function. So I don't feel the need to overly process or prescribe. So that would be my recommendation there. And then just one note of, I think correction is our regular meetings are the first Wednesday, and the language here is the second Wednesday.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's important.
Board members, anyone else in the room with questions, comments?
I didn't bring a screen to be able to see the verbiage, but there is something that says that the meeting can go until 10 p.m. And I would like the verbiage to say something like, in extreme circumstances, it can go until, but not past 10 p.m. Because I don't want it to be a habit of us thinking that we, are here until 10 p.m. Right? I think we should be able to do the work within the constraint of 6 to 8, 8:30, as opposed to because then we have to plan until 10 p.m. Right? And I'm not comfortable with that personally.
So, the statement reads, every effort will be made to conduct each meeting as efficiently as possible in order to adjourn the meeting no later than 10 PM. And so you want to add something saying like under extenuating circumstances
Yeah.
only.
Right, because we should be working under, at least when I signed up for this, I was told 8:30. I don't remember anything about 10 PM. And if we're gonna start adding and we're gonna be beholden to 10 PM, I can honestly say that I can't do that. I physically cannot do that.
It's a long meeting.
Yes. So I just wanted to be like, under extenuating circumstances, we can be expected to go until and no longer past 10. That's just my 2 cents.
I'll add to it. Maybe I mean, we'll know when we need to do that. So we can
Absolutely.
plan for it too, right? So we can somehow say it has to be planned extension.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
I mean,
even
there
now-
have been some circumstances, right, when we have gone over and it has been exhausting, right? And so I just don't want to be beholden to that language, right? Like, well, look, it says here, you should have made plans until 10. Yeah, like I just can't do that.
And even now, we plan the agenda packets for about an hour and a half, maximum
Exactly.
2 hours, and we often postpone agenda items that we know we won't have time for.
Right.
Shay, back to you.
Thank you, Monica. Oh, I'm sorry. Did we have someone else?
Online, I think we see Alyssa's hand up.
Yes, thank you. I'm sorry, I missed it. Thank you. Alyssa, please come off mute.
Right. I think that if the regular cadence of the meetings is expected to be to 8 PM, the language of that statement should be changed to 8 PM. And certainly then add the additional statement that in extenuating circumstances like Lucrecia mentioned. But I think the intent should be if our regular cadence is until 8 PM, that every attempt will be made to complete the meeting by 8 PM.
Thank you, Alyssa. Did anyone else have a question or comment?
I don't see anyone here in the room. I don't know online. No.
All right, well, Tisha, it looks like we have a few requests for some verbiage changes. Shall we move forward with voting?
Yes, and I have one proposal. So I've documented 2 changes. One is just to exclude the language saying the chair needs to be in person. So that would just not be called out at all. So they could participate however they'd like. And then the second change was to modify the section under meetings to read something like every attempt will be made to adjourn the meeting by 8 PM. If needed under extenuating circumstances, the meeting may end later or end as late as 10 PM or something.
As late as 10 PM.
And as late as 10 PM. So those are 2 changes I heard recommended. So one approach would be to just, the motion I provided here is just to adopt the proposed edits in their entirety, and we could say including those 2 proposed changes. And then the group could vote. If someone feels strongly against one of these changes, they should just let us know so that we could converse and vote on them separately.
All right.
So is there
anyone that is proposing any additional changes? Monica, what about anyone in the room?
No, we don't see anyone here in the room with any other changes proposed, nor concerns to what Tisha just said. And I don't see anyone online.
And I have the wording here. It's that little piece at the very end there.
I would like to propose the motion. I move to amend the Equity Board rules and regulations by adopting amendments to Section 1, regular meetings, Section 3, quorum, Section 6, participation, and add a new Section 5, and virtual attendance as proposed And,
And with the two changes.
and with the two changes that have been discussed during the meeting.
Thank you, and I second.
Thank you, board members. Tisha, would you like us to do a roll call for the votes, or how would you prefer the vote to happen?
Yeah, so we could, this is an opportunity, now that the motion's been made and seconded, to see if there's any further discussion. And if there's not any further discussion, then, I'm not sure how you typically take your votes. They could do a voice vote, all in favor,
Yep.
any opposed?
Shay, does that work for you? Would you like to do that? Calling all.
Sure,
Mhm.
that totally works. I'm in favor. And I see Christina next.
Cristina, ¿estás a favor?
Yes, I'm.
Yes, I'm in favor.
Alyssa,
In favor.
Tony.
Aye.
All right. Preeti,
I don't think I vote, right?
What's that?
No,
I don't vote.
no.
Oh, yeah. Pretty is alternate, Shay.
gotcha.
Kelly.
Okay. And Kelly. Okay. Lorna.
However, that being said, I apologize. That being said, I just realized we have two regular board members who are absent tonight, so both Kelly and Pretty vote as regular members.
Okay,
Yes.
yes.
All right. Kelly.
I'm also in support.
Lucretia.
Yes, I support.
And Lorna.
In support.
And did I catch all of our board members that are in attendance?
You short? Oh,
Did I miss any?
yes. Oh no, Alyssa.
Oh, I think I called Alyssa, but maybe
I'm so sorry. Yes, I felt like, okay, I'm so sorry.
no worries. I just wanted to make sure I got everyone. All right. It looks like we're unanimously voting in favor.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tisha. Board members, you have perfect timing. That concluded the 20 minutes allocated to this agenda item, like literally perfect timing. So Shay, back to you for the next agenda item.
All right, wonderful. So it looks like next on our agenda, we're going to do our I'm sorry, we've already done we need to do our communications overview on public engagement, on the public engagement toolkit. Is that also going to be presented by Tisha? And I'm sorry, I think mine was cut off a little bit.
No, that's okay. That's going to be presented by Thomas Rush, our communications manager. He's online there with you. Hi, Thomas. Welcome.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Thomas.
So, Monica, should I share the presentation?
Sure, if you would like to, please feel free to share, or if you prefer that I share for you, then just give me a moment and I can pull it up, whichever is easier for you.
I've got it right here, right at my fingertips.
There you go. Then you should have the ability, there you go.
Oops. All right, making sure everyone is seeing the right screen here. Do we have the presentation up for everyone?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So, thank you all for having me tonight. My name is Thomas Rush. I am the communications manager for the city, and it is a pleasure talking with the board this evening. My agenda is relatively short, just 2 items. Number 1 is a general overview of what the communications team for the city does and who we are. And the second item is a quick review of our public engagement toolkit update. So for that second item, everyone should have gotten the full toolkit as an agenda item, but please let me know if anyone has not had a chance to review that.
Thomas, quick interruption here for you. Do you, I see Alyssa's hand up, and I didn't know if maybe Alyssa had a question before you started. And with that, though, it's also a good question for you. Do you prefer to wait with questions and comments until the very end, or do you want to take them in the middle, or how do you want to go about that? But first, Alyssa, did you have a question before Thomas started, or a comment?
Yes, I got the impression that Thomas was sharing, but I don't see anything.
Oh,
I am
Did you
I don't know if
see
the
it?
others, can the others online see? Because maybe it's me. Okay, Christina
I'm
can
able to see
see,
it.
See if she can move
so
us.
it's just me. I just need to adjust some setting apparently, so it's fine. Sorry, continue.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
In terms of questions, I can't see everyone super well. As long as everyone is comfortable just interrupting me, I have no problem taking questions on the fly. So if that works for everyone, feel free to just stop me in my tracks.
Sounds good, Thomas. Thank you.
No problem. Okay, so for the communications team, it's wonderful to know what we do. So in a line, really what our goal is to create an engaged community. We do that by providing exceptional customer service to all of our customers, and our customers being the city's residents, all the businesses, any tourists or visitors, and of course, the other public servants that participate in our organization. And through that, we do using a variety of dynamic communication tools. So our team, we're a mighty team of three. So it's myself, and my team consists of a communications coordinator and a media production specialist. So the three of us tackle things together to really achieve all of the city's communication goals. Some of you may be curious where the communication team fits in the overall structure of the city organization. Communications being a shared service, meaning we assist all the other departments with their overall needs, means we fit nicely into the administrative services department. Outlined below on the screen are some of our larger responsibilities, which I'll go into more detail later, but it includes the city's website, all of the social media channels. We are responsible for neighborhood engagement, and then project outreach. So anytime another department has a project manager who has a project in question, we help formulate what kind of outreach would be best to the community. And finally, meeting coverage. So all of the meetings that happen in the city are recorded or live streamed, and our team handles putting them online so that residents who couldn't attend in person can view them later on. So I talked about the website. Like I mentioned, my team is responsible for maintaining issaquah.gov. We handle all of the content, really to make sure that what is presented to the public is as up to date as possible and as useful as possible. So the website tends to operate as a central hub of information for all residents. And we want to make sure that it's a good resource for the community. Second, social media. We really have three main goals. We use social media all the time, but the big three things we try to cover are to ensure, number one, that we inform public on all critical information, be that during emergencies or as projects reach different thresholds, reminders on things as simple as like, preschool's coming out to make sure to register everyone. Number two is to really engage in meaningful discussion. So we don't view social media as a way for the city to push information to residents. It's really a dialogue. So if people approach us with questions and comments, we do our best to answer them or to reach out to staff and pass those questions along to get good answers back. And finally, the last one is to create closer connections between the city and the community at large. So what I mean by that is really fostering some of that city pride. Everyone really wants to highlight what a wonderful place Issaquah is to live and work, and we do our best to try and bridge that connection between the community and the city. So on the right there, you'll see a few of the various social media platforms the city uses. So YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, there's a robust Nextdoor presence and a few others. Another way we handle outreach is through newsletters. So the city has a variety of newsletters, but the big two are Issaquah Insider and Mayor Mary Lou Polly's newsletter. So hopefully you all are subscribed to Issaquah Insider, but that is our weekly newsletter, usually goes out on Fridays. It's just a great way to collect all of the relevant events, news, give a snapshot really of what's coming up in the community all in your inbox. So a great way to receive that information. Mayor Polly's newsletter is really a chance for her to talk more about topics that she finds of interest for the community. And those usually are sent out about once a month on average. So I talked a little bit about meeting coverage. That is all posted to the city's YouTube channel and broadcasted also on ICTV. Beyond that, we do a lot of other video work. You can see on screen there's a little snippet of a clip from Blackberry Park. So after our Parks Department did some work up there, we went out and captured some footage. We also do other programmatic stuff, so podcasts. Some of you may be familiar with Issaquah Buzz. It's a recent podcast we started between the communications team and the economic development team to kind of catch all of the rumors and like local gossip regarding businesses or things that are new to town. So it's been pretty well received. And then finally, we also have Uniquely Issaquah, which is another podcast.
The interpreters needed a repetition of that. I'm so sorry. With the background
No
noise, the
worries.
interpreters didn't hear that last comment.
So regarding Issaquah Buzz, that is a podcast between the Economic Development Department and the Communications Department to really talk about the various gossip and rumors regarding businesses in town, just giving the public a chance to hear about what's coming to town or what's happening. It's been pretty positively received. The second podcast I was going to mention is Uniquely Issaquah, which is hosted by our mayor. She gets a chance to interview residents and really talk about stories that are unique to Issaquah itself, giving the podcast its title. So neighborhood engagement is another facet of our role. This is really a chance for us to meet with individualized neighborhoods and talk about what might be on their mind, what might be coming up. Give staff a chance to mention projects that are in the area or might be relevant to the community. And we do our best to meet with each individual neighborhood at least once a year. But if there are more projects coming from the city perspective, we do try and reach out more frequently than that. That is a large-scale, quick overview of the communications team. Are there any questions on what we do or just kind of our role within the wider city audience?
Anyone here in the room, questions or comments? Shay and Thomas, no questions here in the room.
Wonderful.
I'm not sure if online.
I'm not seeing anyone with a question online. Oh, it looks like Tony. I'm sorry. Thank you.
That's okay. I did put a little comment in chat or a question that I have a question in chat like I was supposed to, so I did the right thing. But thank you for calling on me. Thomas, I do have a question about your team. I know you're basically, as a communication team, you're probably very short staffed with only 3 individuals. But I'd love to hear how in your communication messages and the different things that you put out, how do you employ any type of equity lens or a type of equity lens in what you do? And I know you have to be responsive to the stakeholders that want to relay certain information, but how is that done in an equity lens with only 3 individuals? And I'm imagining there's sometimes you just have to just push the information out as the stakeholders want without much edits and without much of different things that you can do to make sure there's an equity lens employed. But I should let you answer that actually.
No, it's a great point. So as a team of 3, we don't have the liberty to take 2-3 weeks at a time on every single topic to really figure it out. So equity is always a challenge for us, trying to make sure we're capturing as much feedback as we can to ensure what we get out matches what everyone needs. So to start, we kind of view what needs to be covered at a citywide level versus sometimes projects are specific to certain neighborhoods. When it's at a citywide level, it's a little bit easier. We're just trying to make sure we get it out to as wide of an audience as possible to make sure there aren't any groups that miss out on hearing about that information. But when projects or topics really come up that are specific to sections of the city, we rely a lot on our project managers to help us understand who we're trying to talk to. So if something comes out and we're really reaching out to the South Lake Sammamish neighborhood on something, understanding who that audience is really helps dictate what types of tools we end up using. As some community members alluded to earlier, not everyone reacts the same way to information. So if one section of the city is really good about being in touch via surveys and online resources, we can rely on those, but other neighborhoods aren't the same. So we need to rely on our project managers to help us figure out the best way to ensure as much of an equitable distribution of information as possible. Does that lead to your question?
It does. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Jay, any others?
Don't see any others. What about in the room, Monica? Oh, Christina has raised her hand. Please come off mute for us.
Oye, en el documento estaba comentando que se debe de cumplir con la ley de discapacidades ADA. ¿Me podría explicar un poquito más de esto, cómo está cubriendo esta ley cuando hace este tipo de comunicaciones, por favor?
So the information mentioned as far as disabled, compliance with the ADA. And so I wanted to know if there's a little bit more of an explanation as to how that compliance with the ADA is realized within the communications department.
Absolutely. It is something we're always striving to do better with. Our website is built to be both fully ADA compliant in terms of the material present, but there are always nuances to that. So if we place an image on a website location or use an image in a social media post, we're striving to use alt text whenever possible. So things like screen readers are fully covered. Again, trying to remove as many barriers as possible so that no one feels like they are limited from learning about what's happening with the city.
I was gonna try to leave for a moment and come back.
Just let them know that that's what we're doing.
Apologies, Thomas. We have some technical issues here. So we are, the room is gonna leave the meeting just for 20 seconds because you guys disappeared. We're gonna be back. We can still hear you, or just give us 20 seconds here.
Sounds good.
We are now back and you can all see us and hear us, hopefully. And now we can also see you. Can you hear us?
We can hear you.
There you go.
Or at least I can. I shouldn't speak for everyone.
So Christina has typed in Spanish a comment that she was wondering about.
Okay, and with that, before you go there, just wanted to mention Lorna was recommending that maybe you stop sharing for a couple of minutes so they can see you all. There you go. Thank you. Go ahead.
So the ADA says that handicaps refer to significant impact on your basic life skills. So this can include learning, reading, communication, and thought. So are we considering also different forms of learning? Some people are visual learners, learn auditorily or kinesthetically. Are there different forms of reading that are considered, like Braille or sign language?
Yeah, excellent question. So as best as we can, we try and cover some of those. Some of them are a little more challenging. We don't have audio recordings of all content, so a little tough for that audience at times. There are ways we can try and improve that, certainly. So Luckily for some of those things like Braille reading, I think screen reading tends to cover a lot of the same aspects. So hopefully that meets that audience's need. But obviously the communications team is open to any suggestions this board has for ways to improve the way we go about providing information.
Shay, we have a question from Lucrecia in the room.
So my question is, I haven't honestly been on the city page in a couple months. So if this has changed, just let me know. But one of the recommendations that I have had in the past is that your translation tool is at the very bottom of the page. And if I was a non-English speaker, a non-English reader, I don't know that I would scroll through an entire page in order to figure out like, oh, I can actually see this page in the language that I can read. And I don't know if that's for aesthetic reasons or why that is, but I would really encourage you to visit other city pages from other parts of the state that do have that translate button on the top right corner, so that people who cannot read in English can easily find it. And I think that's actually an international standard, because I visit international pages a lot and can translate directly from that section.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. We have some limitations that we use a sort of general large-scale solution to build our website, and where the Google Translate button is located is hard-coded into the website. It's something that I've brought up with our website producer to see if we can't adjust that, because I agree with you. In the footer isn't the most natural place to go looking for that solution.
Thank you. And is there anything that we can do to support your effort to address that with whomever hardwires that, or whatever the language is?
Sure. I think if the board is comfortable, I'm happy including that as a recommendation next time I reach out, that you would prefer to see if there are some options to adjust the location of where that displays on the website.
Thank you. Shay, Lorna has a question, comment?
Thomas, in working with websites, one of the recommendations I've done in the past for the company I work for is we recommended that we have instructions on how to translate, or that it even exists, because sometimes people don't know how to do it. And so just messages that are friendly in other languages, especially languages that reflect our community. So then that main landing page looks welcoming to our linguistically diverse community, and they can see messages in their language that helps direct them on how to translate and how to access the information, especially for resources such as community service resources that they might be trying to access, and language would be a barrier for them.
Okay, to make sure I understand the suggestion, would it be for the homepage to feature that type of terminology, or are you thinking something where we have like a centralized location for explaining how to access those services?
So a link for them to be able to see their language identified, and if they click on that language, it kind of gives them a little explanation in their language, like scroll down until it's fixed. Because in my experience, it has been half a year to a year time to make those changes. But in the meantime, what can be done, such as, say Espanol, if someone clicks on that word Espanol, it just gives them some information in their language and directions. Scroll down, you can change the website. Here are some resources if you're trying, because sometimes if they even see a number, are they comfortable calling, or families comfortable calling and sharing information it's an invitation to share in your own language, and if that possibility exists. So kind of a welcome landing page, so that it teaches them that this is okay, and you're welcome to communicate with us in a different language, and this is also how to access the information in other languages.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I think we can tie that to the fact that we also have language line services over the phone. So at the same time, they're learning about how to potentially navigate the website in other languages. They can also, feel comfortable to call in and speak to someone over the phone with an interpreter at the same time to track down some resources if necessary.
Exactly. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you all. I'm gonna chime in really quick to do a time check to let you know that you have about 15, 17 minutes left in this agenda item. And I know that you also have a second part that it's all about the public engagement toolkit. So just wanted to.
All right.
Should
And
I,
Thomas, do you think you
go
could take one more question? Because I think Tony has one. But he's also agreeing to do it at the end if that makes more sense.
Should we push it to the end, Tony?
Sure. Push to the end.
Let's do it.
All right.
All right, I'm gonna reshare my screen so we can continue with the public engagement toolkit. Can everyone see that?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, so thank you for letting me talk about this, and let me get to the second part of our agenda here, really giving an overview of some of the changes we've made. Again, hopefully you've had a chance to check out the toolkit fully, so we'll just kind of do an overarching element right now. But let's talk about the purpose. So really, this is an internal resource. It's used to help project managers engage with the community on their projects by using effective tools and ensuring the right timing. From a 30,000-foot level, the toolkit is really a guide. We've spent some years refining it based off of our engagement with this community to really hone what works best, and utilizing best practices that we've adopted from other municipalities. When it's become clear that certain things work really well, we like to adopt them and bring them into our community as well. So all of that is designed to really help the community feel like they're aware of what's going on and have the opportunity to be engaged when appropriate. As was mentioned earlier, the toolkit's been around for a while. We try and update every 5 years or so to really put on paper and put online those changes. It's a living document, so if there are things that we discover as we go out and talk to the community once, realize something has worked a lot better, we do add that immediately, but every 5 years or so we try and do a full refresh. This version really focused on 3 things. So number 1 is we've adjusted how the toolkit is put together, really treating it as a guiding document. So project managers around the city can open it up and there's a lot of worksheets in it so they can go through step by step and really figure out where along the project they are and how best to engage with the community. Number two is we've looked to improve an equity lens through the document. It's another reason I'm here today is really to get this group's expertise, make sure what we've added in matches, or if you have any additional recommendations for us to continue to look at that. So that's one of the things we really wanted to highlight this time. And as I mentioned, the third thing is we wanted to identify some additional tools that are now available for those project managers to use as they go out to the community. So I'm going to pause here for that second component and really open it up to any feedback or initial comments. I think we tried to frame it around these 3 questions, but obviously whatever this group, this board wants to talk about. But number 1, I mean, really capturing, does this effectively infuse an equity lens into the toolkit? Number 2, to your eye, are there any missing elements that would help staff as they plan out their engagement? And number 3, are there other groups that you feel we should be touching base with for their feedback? So I think I'll stop sharing for a moment. We can talk as a group, see if there's anything else. That would be, whoops, going one slide too far. Any comments or questions?
Yes, I see Tony and Alyssa online, and Monica, I think if you have some people in the room, you can bring them on in between. I'm not sure who came up first. So, Tony, if you would, please.
I'm going to defer to Alyssa.
Okay.
Ladies first.
Okay, so I think Um, okay, a comment first. I provided a comment of feedback via email, and I just wanted to share that with you. And then I have a question. I just thought that when I reviewed the toolkit earlier, I thought it was very thorough. I appreciated the fact that there were, like you mentioned, worksheets and tools that a PM could go in to use. And I thought that I thought it would be very usable, and I also thought that it allowed the user to apply the appropriate equity lens in it as well. My question is, during the public comment section, a comment was made that there's not enough space for feedback for large capital projects through small road projects, and I wasn't sure if those types of projects were in scope for something that the toolkit would get used for. So I just wanted your input on that.
Absolutely. So I think the toolkit is designed to be scalable. So if we have really small projects that, you know, only touch a handful of people, a cul-de-sac, we can adjust what tools are used to really focus on making sure that group is attached and aware of what's going on. The worksheets are designed so that if they don't apply, you can just skip them and move on to the next step. But going all the way up in terms of scaling to large capital projects, we are in the process of a few of those. So one in particular, you know, we're doing some changes. The city is on Northwest Sammamish to add some non-motorized functions. So that's got a whole lot of stakeholders, and it's a huge project for the city. So we take something like the toolkit, figure out which audiences are involved, both geographically and usability. So non-motorized, we have a large cycling component to that. So we want to make sure that as you're looking through who all the stakeholders might be, you find ways to touch base with all those communities on those types of projects. So ideally, I believe it covers all those things. Again, if there are gaps, we're always open to looking at improvements. So yeah, thank you for your comments earlier too.
Thank you, Alyssa. Tony, are you ready?
Sure, I'm ready right now. Yeah,
Wonderful.
good.
Thank
I'm
you.
ready. All right. So, Alyssa, thank you for actually you covered part of my question, so thank you for that. And my other, I guess it's more of a comment than as a question. When I look at, let's say, everything that's done in communications, I think engaging with our group, with the equity board, would be, depending upon what's going to be communicated to the public, us having, as a board, having a lens into maybe certain pieces of communication. So, for example, if I was to communicate something out to the Latino community, one of the people I'd reach out to would be Christina, of course, right? Of course. And so I wonder about those different things that happen in the communication realm, because I'd hate to see the city I love make the mistake that Band-Aid did years ago when they pushed out their flesh-colored Band-Aids and saying that they were flesh-colored without talking to people like me and saying, "What do you think about this?" If you see what I'm saying, what I'm going with there. And so, what's your thoughts on maybe integrating our eyes and ears and on certain pieces of communication before they go out to public?
Yeah, it's a great, insightful idea to try and figure out how best to implement something like that. I know the city communications team in particular likes to try to utilize Monica's team, and by extension, I guess the board would be a good way to look at that and making sure we're not missing or forgetting to think about different lenses to how we go about that kind of communication. I could see value in trying to figure out, especially on larger projects where we want to make sure there's plenty of bandwidth to cover, if we have timelines that allow for that type of outreach, to really figure out if there is a component there for the board, knowing full well your plates are already so full with so many things. I wouldn't want to be a burden on those things, but I agree with you. There might be a communication component that would be valuable to at least run by the board to see if they have other suggestions or potential avenues that, hey, this group over here might have a vested interest. Have you talked about reaching out with them?
Right. And I think that all this, if you don't mind me interrupting, I think that's all depending upon what's to be put out to the public space, so to speak, right? If it's something that makes sense, if it's in some way involving the Jewish community, Latino community, maybe any type of diaspora of what we do in the equity lens, then I think that we should have, like, and hopefully taking some of the things off of Monica's plate, that we can all weigh in on some of those things that may involve different varying communities within the larger Issaquah area.
Yeah, I think that's certainly something we could look into.
All right, and Monica, did we have anyone in the room that would like to make a comment or have a question?
Anyone?
Too bad. I see Shay's got her hand up, so I can always wait. I don't know what order we're
Okay,
doing.
yes. I just wanted to give everyone an opportunity. But my question was simply related to timing, because I know that specific activities tend to take a little more time. For example, Black History Month, we typically start planning a few months ahead, and things like that. So when you all are preparing your public announcements, then do you all look at a specific timeline so that if you do have to incorporate some comments from the equity board or some suggestions, you may have the correct amount of time to get it done?
Yeah, I think it's a vague answer, but I think it's very dependent on the project. Sometimes we know they're coming and we have plenty of time, like you mentioned, something that an initiative we do every year annually. It's a little bit easier to plan those out. At other times, the information comes to us, and as almost like middlemen, we're like, well, let's see what we can do best with this, get it out to the community in a timely fashion because it's pertinent information. But as best we can, we try to build in larger timescales. It's just not always possible.
Thank
I hope
you.
that's not too vague for you.
No, I totally understand. Thank you.
And
Sophie, if you're ready.
Shay, I'm not sure if you heard pretty earlier. She has a comment.
Yes,
Yeah.
I was actually trying to call on her, and
There you go.
Okay, I will go. So I just had a couple of comments and maybe some questions here. One thing is, and maybe I'll maybe suggest that you Google it, but I think the word stakeholder is becoming a little bit out of use in these contexts. There's some history with broken treaties and contracts with our Native and Indigenous people, and so it's just got some bad connotations to it these days. So I'd recommend maybe thinking about that and kind of doing a little bit of research around that word. The next thing, in some other community engagement or public engagement spaces I've been in, that I've seen also, so I see here you've got like inform, consult, collaborate. I've also seen things extend as far as co-create. And so I'd encourage you to think about what is that next layer to actually work more hand in hand with impacted communities to create solutions that they initiate versus having staff and others kind of initiate what alternatives are. So just kind of think about like if there's another layer around the kind of the level of engagement that could be added here. So I know we've kind of approved, and I know it's been kind of now accepted as a city policy, that an equity framework. And so I know you've tried to integrate an equity lens here. And so I don't know if you've used that newly adopted equity framework as a way to guide, but I would recommend pulling in language from there and references to that document as well. So it's super fresh and current, because I know that's going to be started, like the implementation or training around that will be happening pretty soon. And then just a couple more things. So one thing is, I think there's like a layer of questions underneath here, like even around like, are you planning to provide refreshments? Kind of thinking about like, given the community where the engagement is happening, are they culturally appropriate refreshments, or are you being a little bit more global in what you think about in terms of providing refreshments, or just kind of things like that, that actually kind of, maybe it's a deeper level of detail, but I think that's also kind of a way to make folks of different communities feel welcome in these public spaces where they may not have frequently participated. And my one last thing is, I see the table with the list of organizations recommended, Issaquah specific examples. And I'm thinking about so there's a heading for cultural groups like the Muslim Community Resource Center. And I'm thinking about what kind of engagement falls under cultural groups, or it seems like they would be a good group to reach out to across these other policy areas, like neighborhoods, property owners. And so I'm not sure how, by getting stuck on that row of cultural groups, that limits the projects that they are kind of highlighted to engage with. So just kind of broadening how these organizations are kind of selected for different rows. So those are some of my thoughts.
Thank you. Those are great. And I appreciate you letting me know about the terminology. I had not heard that one, so I'm definitely going to have to look into that. For your question regarding the groupings itself, I think the thought process there is not to kind of select and basically statically place those groups so much as if there are areas in your project scope that may impact things, considering both cultural groups as its own group. I'm desperately trying to avoid using the word stakeholder right now, and it's stuck in my head. So if you say you're working on a project at a certain intersection or at a certain location geographically, keeping in mind that you're not only thinking about the residents who live there, but also potentially groups that may practice in that area or have a larger impact in that zone, really thinking about those different groups in that way too. But certainly there isn't any reason that those cultural groups can't be, their feedback can't be used in other locations as well. So that's a good point. And I'm forgetting your middle one now, so I apologize if there was anything outside of a comment there that you were looking for clarity on.
I think so. Thank you.
All right, and we have another question or comment, I'm sorry, from Alyssa.
Okay, very quickly. One is, thank you very much for on the equity slide. I did notice that the equity framework link and the religious and cultural calendar links were there. And so it was very nice to see those being called out. The question is that another question that was raised during the public comment section was a comment about putting the toolkit out in the public in order to ask for public comments and feedback. And I am imagining that by virtue of having it in our agenda and this being a public session, that's one way in which and wondering if there are other ways in which that gets accomplished currently.
Yeah, sure. So I think, like I said, we have it here at this board meeting. We often take feedback from other groups too to try and figure out if we're missing anything during that engagement process. The toolkit itself tends to be like a positive feedback loop as it's used. We're engaging with the public. We learn when things don't work well. Those things get removed as new things get added. So thankfully, the toolkit itself does have its own public engagement process by just virtue of being used. It wasn't part of the practice currently planned in the timeline to take it out to the wider audience for any type of feedback. But there is the commitment to always be open to suggestions from the community if they feel there are other ways that would best allow us to engage with them.
Thank Thank you so much. And I want to thank everyone again for your questions and comments, especially you, Cynthia. Yeah, I think you resonated quite well with a lot of us with the term stakeholder. So thank you so much for bringing that up. Does anyone else have any questions or comments?
Anyone else in the room here? Oh,
I think
Luana?
I'm still processing the comment made at the hearing about the access and the fact that people who need to access some of this information need to be very technologically savvy. Because in following one of the topics that you referred to, Thomas, I did realize that I was only in a loop because I was following my neighborhood Facebook group and it was very tight. And so if there's not a very tight group, people can get easily lost in trying to do the follow-up work. And so if people are, and then reading the link to that work, I noticed that you had to opt in to be notified about ongoing work. And so I'm just wondering if there's some way that that information can be more accessible to those people who've participated and much more welcoming. Because I think what happens is that in a sense of community, people, once they've expressed community input, they gave something to this discussion and now they want to receive, like, hey, we heard you and this is what we decided. So something a little bit more concrete in their response from the city. And I totally recognize, Thomas, that you're a 3-people group and getting something concrete back. So I'm wondering if there's some way to help that situation, but I think it would be good to, how do we go out so that it's more, it's not that the community has to constantly go on the website and navigate it, because it can be challenging for many, but how can we go out to the public more with response, especially to those who have shown interest and are engaging with very direct, clear response of, we heard you, this is what we did, here's our next step. And it's something to create that relationship, that ongoing dialogue. And I think in seeing this, I feel like there's a component missing. And it feels like it's there in listening because it says collaborate and it feels like it's there. But as Preeti said, I think we need to have, I'm wondering if we can add a few more components, and one of the components about how do we create that relationship and that community.
No, excellent questions. I think we've tried a number of ways to try and make it feel like the feedback that's given on projects is well received and kind of closing that feedback loop. But it's not always the easiest to make sure we capture everyone. So it's always a work in progress. We can certainly look into some ways that makes for a more, as you used, concrete way of kind of highlighting how we've heard the information and how it's used. I think we often use the website as the lowest possible barrier, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's the best solution. So putting information there saying, here's the survey we heard, here's kind of the feedback, here's the next steps. Really easy for us to put that information there, but not always the easiest for the residents to find. So we can look into ways to try and improve on that for sure. I don't know if there's a super obvious solution, but we can definitely brainstorm that and try and find some solutions.
Thank you. With that, I'm jumping in just to do another time check. We are 5-6 minutes over this agenda item, board members, just letting you know.
Thank you for that, Monica. And I think we have one more question from Christina. And do we have anyone else in the room?
I don't see anyone else in the room, Kelly, Lucrecia. No one else in the room, Shay.
Wonderful. Christina, you'll be our last question or comment for the night, or for this particular topic.
It's okay. Solamente quisiera hacer un comentario referente a que no solo la tecnología importa. Hay un tema muy importante a nivel comunidad que es la salud mental. Y yo creo que ahí tendríamos que voltear e invitar a la gente a que participe en la comunidad, porque a que se vuelvan a sentir integrados y vivos. Es parte de su salud.
I'm sorry. there's another aspect as far as communication and access. Besides all of the forms that were mentioned previously, I think it's important to consider, as far as technology, the needs of the people in our community who have mental health issues, so that we are reaching them and they are also feeling included. I think that that's quite important as far as how technology is used as well.
Yes, excellent point. We can always do more in that realm. It's sometimes difficult to determine what the best tool is to make sure we're really providing that equitable lens to that group as well. But it's certainly something I know as a communications team, we always strive to do a little better with. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Thomas, for answering all of our questions. Monica, I think if we have no one else, we may be ready to move forward.
Sounds
Yeah,
good.
Oh, sorry, Monica. I was just going to quickly reiterate, thank you all for having me. In terms of next steps, if you have any other comments you'd like to provide, I think I put a timeline by February 10th would be ideal to receive those either through Monica or myself. And we very much appreciate having this lens to kind of look through and make a better end product for the community.
Thank you. Sounds good. Thank you so much, Thomas.
Thank you.
Okay, so the room temperature here, it's a little bit up and down. It's either way too hot or way too cold.
Yeah, and we're definitely under the vents, so it's like, I feel like I'm under a blow dryer.
Oh my goodness.
So it's in the, I don't know if you have, give me a second. Board members, since it's a long meeting, do you feel like you would like to take a 2-minute break really quick? Or how is everybody feeling? Here in the room, we would prefer a 2-minute break if we can. Online, say, and everyone else.
I think that's doable.
Okay. So can we reach 7:26?
I'm getting a mild headache, and I think it's the heat. So I think it's very dry.
I just lowered the heat a little bit now, but you should tell me before. I didn't realize sometimes it's like, you put it at 71, I put it to 69, I hit the lower.
There is no way that's 71 degrees. It feels like 80.
It feels good to me. Yeah, I'm like, oh, I'm feeling good.
We should swap seats because literally it hits you like I feel like
this.
You know?
I'll swap, you'll swap.
Yeah, because I feel just right. Not cold for the first time today.
All right, thank you, Monica. Hope everybody's a little refreshed now. So we will move forward with our next agenda item on government training, and we will welcome Tisha back to talk with us about that.
Shay, give us just a moment. I think you might have a different agenda in front of you, but Lorna has a quick comment before we move forward.
Thank you.
In listening to the public comment on the communication plan, I'm not quite feeling like all of the questions that she had asked have been addressed. And I'm wondering, once Thomas has had some time to look at their communication plan, if we can meet with them again in another couple months, because I do think a lot of the points she had were really valid points that need to be addressed, especially if you're looking through the eyes of equity. And to me, it's always also about community and relationship.
Mm-hmm.
There are some words, there are definitely things that Preeti had mentioned that I'd love to see added, and I'd love to do a follow-up to see where they are in their thinking, so that it is an ongoing conversation with us, because it feels right now that it's a very loose, there are many loose ends between what she said and what he said, and how does this all come together?
Mm-hmm. So definitely, so thank you so much. And as Thomas said, he would like to hear more feedback. So it seems like the agreement in the room is that you would like Thomas to come back to the board in a couple of months to see how the feedback is implemented. Shay, Alyssa, Tony, Christina online, are you all in agreement? I can get in contact with Thomas and invite him back in a couple of months. Would that work for everyone?
I also wanted to.
Yes.
I also wanted to offer him that I would be willing to have conversations. I cannot
Outside.
volunteer with all of you, but if he wants to look at it and, you know, for comment I said, made him think about something, but he wants like follow-up, like ongoing collaboration, because I feel like also Preeti and many of you online made a lot of things came out. But to make all those changes, sometimes a little bit more conversation needs to go in small group format. And so I want to make sure he knows that at least I am very willing to have small group conversations with him between now and the next time he presents. Or if he wants to present in like 2 or 3 months and then do it afterwards. But I feel like this is a conversation that needs a little bit more.
Again, very, very great one. Would you like me to pass on the information, or would you like to contact him directly? Do you have a preference, or we can
I think if we can find out if there are other people who wouldn't mind volunteering themselves, so then it's not all of us and dealing him with emails, but you know, we can have a conversation. So
kind of like have a subcommittee, like a group of folks who can work directly with communications. Yes. Shay, back to you. I see that some of you have comments there, so.
Yes, we have Alyssa.
Sure. Great comments there. I was intentionally, when during the public comments, I was taking notes on some of the comments, and that was why you heard me going back specifically to the public comments and trying to drive answers to those specific questions that were asked. I think it would be in the spirit of, you know, making sure that the public comments don't just fall on the floor. If we would go back to the beginning of the session, collect the questions, and even present them back to Thomas via email, so that he can perhaps provide more feedback to those questions. I think that would probably also help our public commenter to feel that, you know, they've been heard.
I'd like to follow up with what Elisa is saying, in that I don't know that there's anything worse than losing engaged community members, right? And you don't want to reach a threshold where people who are very vested just walk away, because most of the time they don't walk away. There's usually fallout, right? And now their energy is not going to be spent on engaging with the city. It's going to be about possibly engaging in ways that are not constructive for the city. So we don't want to get to that point.
Great comments, board members.
Thank you so much. And I also saw that Tony had suggested possibly a subcommittee, and Monica, you had also mentioned that. So maybe that's something for us to consider in the near future.
Yes, a lot of great ideas, board members. So definitely, maybe I can, just as you still continue to process, I can follow up with you to see who else is interested in working directly with Thomas. I can follow up with Thomas to summarize your suggestions. And then we also need to work on getting back with the community member in summarizing the discussion tonight. And making sure that the community member feels heard, that the comments were not just in vain, and continue to build on that collaboration with them. So thank you. Great suggestions.
Thank you, everyone. So if we're ready, Monica, I think we can go ahead and move to our next agenda item. If no one else has any questions or comments.
Yes, absolutely. We can do that. And the next agenda item for us tonight is actually bringing back the 2023 work plan conversation, and a little bit the equity framework implementation conversation. Depending on time, we'll see how much time we have to go in details. I would also like, under other business and announcements, to propose another agenda item for a future meeting where we have more time. But I'm gonna talk about that a little bit later. So for the 2023 work plan, I want to start by refreshing everyone's memory. We talked about the work plan back at the end of 2022. And if you recall, we had two types of work plan items. On one end, agenda items that will be brought to the equity board throughout the year from various different departments. And then a second set of agenda items that were board member proposed agenda items. We went through a prioritization exercise and we came up with, we prioritized for this year, 4 agenda items. And then we created an ad hoc small subcommittee. I want to thank Pretty, Kelly, and Alyssa for working together over the last couple of months in detailing the scope of work for those 4 agenda items. So those were, we put those in the packet for you tonight. I'm happy to share the screen for a brief overview if you would like to go through those. And really the next step, if you, there's always work to be done in scoping out those work plan items. I think my recommendation as staff would be to really start creating other subcommittees for each of those agenda items and start scheduling meetings and start working on those, and we can adjust those as we go. Otherwise, we can work on perfecting the scope of work for those until the end of the year, and then we are going to find ourselves not making much progress. So with that being said, I just want to briefly call out, just as a refresher, the 4 big topics that you as a board agreed upon a couple of months ago. So, and we worked a little bit on some titles and again on definitions, but the first one was to explore bias and privilege through data in city departments. So this is a long-term goal because ideally, as the committee with Pretty, Kelly, and Alyssa suggested, it would be great to work with all city departments. For this year, though, in particular, as the board clearly intended, you would like to start working with the police department in identifying bias and privilege through data tracking there. So that is the one work item that we are ready to start on. We identified community partners in that and staff partners, identified some objectives, timelines for that. The second work item for the year, as you prioritized, was exploring bias and privilege in business and customer service in particular. So this would be a body of work with the community. It's a community-facing agenda item. We would also work with our economic development partners on this. We lost everyone, maybe. I don't know. Can you hear us online? I think we lost them.
Yes, I can hear you.
We can hear you.
I can hear.
I can hear it too.
Oh, that's strange. I've lost Monica.
Oh, it looks like we might have lost them.
Lost you all for a moment, but we are now back.
Yes, we were able to hear you though.
Oh, you're able to hear us? Okay. So we thought we lost you. We left the meeting and we came back. Are you all good now? Can you hear us?
La reunión, regresamos, todos nos escuchan ahora, sí, okay.
There you go.
The Spanish interpreter is coming through.
Yes, so I think the Spanish interpreters are not muted. Spanish interpreters, do you mind putting yourselves on mute?
Yeah, we're muted.
Thank you. Okay, so we were highlighting the second agenda item, again, as that would be a body of work with the businesses in the community and with our economic development division in the city. And then the third work item would be reporting bias and doing a lot of research and work around this. And last but not least, for sure, continuing community conversations or cultural conversations. And this can be also tied into some of the previous work items or just separate. But I'm gonna pause here to see if anyone has any high-level questions on this work that Pretty Kelly, Alyssa, and I did over the last couple of months. And if not, I think you don't have to answer now, but please look out for an email follow-up to invite you to sign up to be part of this work. Shay.
Yes, I was gonna ask, have you all gotten as far as timelines, or are we just kind of putting together the plans at this point?
Yes. So we did identify timelines for each of the projects approximately, and we estimated how long it's gonna take depending on how large the item is. And then in addition, I tried to start putting in the by month agenda items. I just tried to, initially, I started with number 1 since that was a prioritization. I thought that would be the most important one that we can start as early as this next month or this month. And then at least for quarters, I put an estimation on quarter 2 starts with the next one, quarter 3 and 4. Does that answer your question, Shay?
It does, thank you. And I was seeing the screen flip a little bit, so I was unable to see the timeline initially. And I see that Tony also had a question on when we can get started.
Right after this meeting. So yes, look out for an email from me in the next couple of days. So are we any other comments or questions on this?
Just a quick comment. Thank you all for your work on this. That looks really great. I'm really excited about it.
Okay, thank you. It's just the beginning. But I appreciate it. Had great conversations with Pretty and Kelly and Alyssa, and I'm excited for what the opportunities lie ahead. I don't know if any of you would like to say something else.
Oh no, it feels exciting, and it feels like we're launching into kind of a new era of our board work by kind of initiating a work plan. So I'm excited.
Thank you. And so with that, board members, before we talk a little bit about the equity framework, on the bi-monthly document of work plan, that I think I consider that as a live document. We are going to update it as we go. And based on some information going back and forth emails that you had from me, there are a few upcoming meetings coming up that are outside of our regular meetings. So the next month feels a little bit busy for all of you. Wanted to gauge the room a little bit. So February 1st is today. There's a February 16th meeting planned. That will be a joint meeting with 3 other boards. So a lot of work. I haven't been part of prepping for that, but I am being told that there's a lot of information that's going to be coming out. So as soon as I'm going to have that information, I'm going to share it. Then our next meeting is in March. And then also in mid-March, we are hoping for a joint meeting with the Human Services Commission. So I'm hoping to have a quorum for all of these meetings, but please do let me know if you have any planned travels, or if you cannot make it in advance or something, let me know so we can.
I do know I'm not gonna
go.
I'm planning on coming on the 16th and the 1st, but March 15th I have an event. So.
Thank you for letting me know. And any questions or other comments about the upcoming 2-3 meetings?
And the other one was March 15th? I can't do that.
I think so. I'm doubting myself now. It is the March 15th. So thank you both. The 2 of you cannot make it.
No, I'm on plane.
Okay, thank you.
If anybody else can make it, I would love if that one was rescheduled, because I'm really interested in the meeting with Human Services.
Okay.
Mm.
I'll look into that. I was trying to choose either the Human Services Commission meeting or this board meeting for the practicality of trying to find room and other things, but we'll look into that and we'll get back. Yes. Okay, Christina, I see also your hand up.
Estaba pensando en la herramienta de comunicación que se nos presentó anteriormente. Supongo que ese tipo de herramientas son las que vamos a estar usando también nosotros para nuestras investigaciones. Si es así, ellos comentaban en algún punto algo acerca de los socios internos. ¿Podrían comentarnos algo más, por favor?
So I was reflecting on the information on the communications that we were just talking about, and I imagine that that same framework is what we will be using ourselves. There was a comment made about the internal stakeholders, I guess you would say. So I'm wondering if that could be expanded upon a little bit.
The word stakeholder?
O sea, se refiere a la palabra.
Can you repeat that last part?
¿Cuáles podrían ser como los socios internos que se estarían considerando o que se podrían considerar en este tipo de...
Not the word stakeholder. She's referring to the people who are considered stakeholders. So if it could be explained to me a little bit more, who are considered the stakeholders in this process?
The internal.
The internal
stakeholders.
And I'm not sure what Thomas was referring to for internal, because I think this is about the communications one, right?
Is it the framework?
Yeah, and the communication presentation.
Okay. So internal, typically, I think there are other departments. If they're that would be my guess, but I'm not sure. That would be something we can follow up with Thomas and ask for clarification, because I'm not sure what he was referring to.
Ok, pero nosotros podríamos caer en algo de eso. En tener algunos socios para nuestras investigaciones.
But do we have something to do with that? Are there stakeholders within our different research projects?
I'm not sure, Christina. Would be happy to follow up separate and even try to talk with Thomas and ask. Would that be helpful?
Yeah, thank you.
Separately, yeah. Okay, thank you. Okay. So moving on for the sake of time, board members, the second piece to the discussion on the work plan item was, again, just as we had talked a little bit last month, to start utilizing as a board the equity framework. And if you recall, that was a set of 13 questions that you all helped the city's equity consultant at that time, Chan Kelly Ray, propose to City Council. And just again, as a brief background, City Council approved it as a pilot this year. We would like to try to implement it and later on provide feedback on how that's working. Internally also at the city, staff are trying to implement it. And I think rightfully so, pretty expressed interest and proposed to the board. Let's start using the equity framework as a tool for the projects that come to us. So just wanted to open it up for any question, conversation that you would like to have as a board, and moving forward, how you would like to use it and what would be helpful to you all. Anything other than for me just putting it on at the top of the agenda packet for you to have it as a visual.
It looks like Tony has a comment for us.
Yeah, I'm actually, and I hope there's no one from council in the room right now, but I'm just going to go ahead and say it. I'm low-key offended that it's just a pilot. I am. I'm just low-key. I'm just going to put myself out there. I'm low-key offended as a pilot because if we espouse to be a city that frames equity, why is it a pilot? And I know this probably shouldn't be talked about right now, but it should be just simply like, hey, this is great. We want to hire people in Monica, and I'm not sure, I didn't explain it to everyone else, but my daughter, she applied for the city of Issaquah for a position, and she was asked absolutely not one equity question at all, which I was shocked about. She was shocked about. Um, I don't see why this has to be a test. I'm fine with it for right now, but it's just kind of a little bit like, what's there? Why is this a test? This is like an obvious thing. It should be implemented, period, in the story. But um, I'm sorry. I'm just a little fired up today. I'm sorry.
Yeah, don't, as Lorna said, don't apologize, Tony. And that's, I'm not sure if I did not explain or I wasn't necessarily part. I think the intent, and again, it's, I don't want to make excuses. I think the intent was, okay, everyone, try it and see what's working and what's not working. What do it, consider it again as a live document, what needs to be adjusted. I'm guessing that was more the intent rather than pilot it and see when we make it permanent. I think it was more to the idea of a live document.
Okay. I'm just I guess my hope and fear is that individuals at the city and certain department heads and department leaders don't think equity is valuable. Because when I hear the city council said, okay, and I'm not sure, Monica, if you're using their language, which is like, hey, try it out, see if it works. It almost seems like, hey, we know that you don't really care about this, or you probably don't, and you don't think it might be valuable, but let's try it out and see if it has value. Like, it has value. Use it. Do it. And I'm sorry, I know it's just a pilot, and I've just got to get, through that and just say, at least it's a start. It's just a step, right? We got to make the steps. It just fires me up when I hear that it's a pilot.
No, rightfully so, Tony, rightfully so. Thank you. Lorna.
Can we look at the word pilot and how it's being used? Because I think in my mind, when I saw the word pilot, I assumed that it was a live document. But at the same time, I totally understand Tony's concern because when I've looked at curriculum, we piloted curriculum A, B, and C to test it out to see which one works. And then we drop, and then adopt the one. And in this case, there is no B. A is it, and we are adopting it, but we might tweak it. And so I think using the word pilot is, in what I'm hearing, it seems like we're not really piloting it, we're using it, and it's a live document. There's a different.
Definitely.
Yes.
Maybe phase one iteration instead of pilot.
Or saying it's a live document, very clearly saying it's a live document. We can add or clarify sentences as we're going, but this is something valuable that everyone should be using. And if you don't like it, we will fix this document, but we will have some kind of equity framework as we consider, because I think the word pilot is triggering, because it seems like if we don't like it, it's too much work to do. We might not use it at all, and that's not an option.
Yeah, especially if there isn't an option B or C, right? Then that means then we just give up.
So the use, I think, is what we need of the word pilot.
Well said.
In the last meeting, we discussed that they needed to be trained, that people needed to be trained to use the equity framework. And so is there any, has the city lost interest in training staff on the equity framework?
I don't believe the city lost interest. And I cannot speak for the city. I think the city struggles with maybe perhaps knowing exactly what to do and how to do it. And so I think, I don't know. I'm happy to check in with our internal HR team who's working on this and get an update.
Actually, maybe you should have them come talk to us. I love the way you do that. You always say, bring them back, let's talk to us. Because then they can hear our concerns.
Yeah.
Because this work was done. What's next?
Right. Yeah.
Because we don't want it to be like a check for equity. Now people are going to say we use the the equity framework, but if you didn't really know how to use a tool, it becomes a dangerous thing to give someone. So,
And that's
yeah,
why we
sorry.
need to use it.
Yes, that's
Sure.
what we, yes, yes.
I
I'm
know
sorry.
you need to go.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much, Lorna. No, all valid points, board members. And that's why I think on one end, we can check in internally how the implementation is going internally at the city. And then for you as a board to see how you can utilize it. So then you can, provide input on how to make it bigger and better.
And we should be trained on how to use it too.
Yes. And Shay and Elisa here online, I see your hands up there.
Yes, and I think Elisa's hand was up first. So
Okay.
Elisa, please.
I was just going to say, I was pleasantly surprised to see that it was there in the toolkit and that the topic of, we have to do training first seemed to be pushed to the side. So I was kind of happy to let that slide and let us start using it, if that's the case.
Yeah. Absolutely. Thank you.
And I just kind of wanted to ask, do we have an example of what training may have looked like in other cities or other states to maybe have something to work with? Or has Shannon actually, some examples?
Shay, do you mind repeating your last question? We lost you a little bit.
Sorry about that. I was just going to ask if we have any awareness of any examples of what training looks like.
Yeah, I personally don't have, but I would love to circle back and have this conversation internally at the city and come back. I think if you all would like, as Kelly and Lorna suggested, to perhaps invite our HR team back as they are leading this effort internally to have a conversation. If you all are okay with that, that might be valuable.
Yes, I think that's a good idea.
Okay, that sounds good. Meanwhile, for the upcoming meetings, is that something that you would like to try, as Pretty suggested, that you would like to try on your own to use the framework for any projects that are being brought to us? For example, the upcoming meeting on February 16, is that something that you would like to use? Alyssa has thumbs up.
I think, I'm just, sorry, but I think it would be helpful for us to figure out what scenarios it is useful in and which ones it's not. So, because like in my mind, I'm like, how can I use it at a meeting? But at the same time, being curious, let's see, right? And then I think with our work plan, I mean, it's kind of, to me, it's a little meta because our work plan is equity focused, and to provide an equity, framework on an equity focused project might be a little weird, but I think it's, again, another opportunity for us to test out on what types of projects it should be applied, so we can get a better sense of that and have some skin in the game, if you will, like if we're asking others to do it, for us to understand where it works and where it may not work.
Yeah. And for me personally, I think once we all feel comfortable with it, it should be everything that we breathe, and it should be part of our everyday, right? We should always ask ourselves those questions in anything that we do, whether that it's a project or whether it's a report that we are working on, right? But yeah, no, okay, thank you. Anything else on this for now?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment that maybe we can look at our next, upcoming project and, go ahead and just try it out and get started, even before we get feedback on training and things like that, and see how it goes. Because to Preeti's point, we gotta test it and see what happens or how we end up responding. And I don't know if that's something we can do in a public forum like this one, or if it's something that maybe one of our subcommittees might need to work on.
Yeah, and actually this ties to what the questions I was gonna pose to you all. If you would like to use the equity framework and try it out, or would you like to have a subcommittee work on a sort of criteria of what are you looking for any projects that are brought to you? Would you like just to use the equity framework? Do you want to establish a criteria of questions or anything that you would like to have answered before an item gets brought back to you? So regardless, it seems like everybody's open to trying new things, but also more discussion is needed. And so we can wait and see for the February 16 meetings. So that's going to be on capital improvement plans to see what materials are brought in to you, and if it makes any sense to try to test the equity framework at that time, or if not, to identify the next project, right? Okay.
Let's test it.
Yeah.
We've talked about it a lot. Let's test it. It's a series of questions. I think we can all make a pretty good stab at it.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with
Thank you,
those.
Alyssa.
Yes, great. Okay, thank you, board members. I think that's it for tonight in terms of this agenda topics. Yeah.
All right, wonderful. And Monica, did you have any other business or announcements for us?
Again, we are out of time, and that was the case last month as well. I can individually talk with those of you that terms expire this year. I just wanted to make sure, don't worry about it. There's a process for recruitment that happens usually between February and March. Anyone who is interested in applying to the equity board typically gets interviewed by either the chair and vice chair and the staff member, or if the chair and vice chair are not available, then another board member. And so those board members who are interested, let's say if your term expires and you're interested in continuing, you still need to reapply and interview. However, your interview process, it's a little bit different because you've been already part of the group. So I can connect individually with those of you who are interested in continuing, but also if there's anyone who's not interested in continuing or does not have the capacity and wants to step down, this is the good time to also let us know, since we are gonna go through a recruitment process. It's a good time to look into that. And that's all on my end for tonight.
All right, wonderful. Thank you so much for everything. As always, Monica, you've been amazing. We are just a few minutes over, but we can adjourn at 8:02. Thank you all for coming tonight, and we appreciate everyone's comments and feedback.
Thank you very much, board members. Good evening.
Have a good night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.